Well, from February, anyone charged with a Schedule 8 offence has to provide a DNA sample which will be entered into a national database. Schedule 8 offences include murder and rape, and experts believe this is well overdue, but can it be implemented correctly? Police stations will have to be stocked with the correct equipment and officers urgently trained. Late last year, it was reported that the DNA backlog at the police laboratory had increased to nearly 250,000. Well, Vanessa Lynch has been driving the adoption of legislation like this for years now, and she's on the line to us. Vanessa, it's great to chat to you again. I feel really silly because I just presumed if there was a serious offence, DNA swabs were taken, and it was just a matter of protocol. I've obviously been watching too many American crime shows.
Morning, Annika. You're not entirely incorrect. The DNA Act, which was passed in 2015, did have a provision that was discretionary for police officers to take a DNA sample from an arrestee of a Schedule 8 offence, which is quite a broad range of offences. This particular provision, which is being enacted now on the 1st of February, makes it mandatory. So we've moved from a discretionary basis to a mandatory basis. This just means that there is no choice but to always take a DNA sample. So in some respects, we hope that most of the violent offenders were being sampled, but that wasn't really the case. Now there's no choice, and this will really be a game changer in terms of populating the DNA database with all arrestees and linking them possibly to cold cases or to serial offences.
Let's just look at cold cases and how that could help, and also about reoffenders. We've got a very high rate of people reoffending and ending up back in prison.
That's exactly right. And, you know, a DNA database has proven to be one of the most successful methodologies to link serial offenders to crimes. So, for instance, every time you go to a crime scene and you collect evidence, you put that DNA profile, once it's been analyzed, onto a database, you can link already that this is a serial offender because the same DNA profile is found on various crime scenes. You can then arrest somebody on a completely unrelated offence, for instance, a common assault, and link that person to 30 rapes. And we've seen this in the past in South Africa. So the more known profiles that you have in a database, the greater the chance you have of linking them to serial offences which have been loaded onto the database. So that is why the call to have this as a mandatory provision makes it so important to, as you say, link serial offenders and link them to cold cases and stop them from obviously committing further crimes.
Vanessa, you know how important the integrity of a chain of evidence has to be. There cannot be a break in that chain in order for a successful prosecution to take place. Are you satisfied that our police services will be able to make sure that whatever DNA swabs are taken will be correctly taken and stored?
Well, it's a very simple process, a reference sample, Annika. It's a cheek swab and a lot less invasive than a COVID test. But yeah, I do think so. They do undergo training, and only trained police officers can take a DNA sample. They have been doing it over the course of the last 7 years, and there hasn't been any complaints. When I was on the DNA board, there've been no complaints of them not taking it correctly, and there've been no complaints of contamination. Remember that you can always take it again if there is an issue with it, but it's a relatively simple procedure. It's done throughout the world, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. One of the things you mentioned is the backlog, and I do think that the government needs to really explore the use of public-private partnerships to increase capacity. There are definitely improvements with regards to the backlog. They've made inroads to about 80,000 cases. They're also building a new laboratory in the Eastern Cape. But perhaps in order to really get to the point where we don't have a backlog, they could increase that capacity to ensure that they reduce that backlog. They've given 1st of November of this year, 2022, as the zero backlog date. So let's hope that they keep moving in the right direction.